Welcome to online video tutorials. I, Professor Ningambika Meti, Sai Vidya Institute of Technology. I'm here to talk about the risk management insurance, that is finance specialization subject. In a previous video, we talked about the unit 1. A part of it was explained. In this, we'll be understanding more about the some of the topics related to unit 1. So let's understand some of the very important topic related to the unit 1. Okay, so today we're going to understand the risk management process. It's a very important questions asked in many of the question paper. So before understanding the process, in the previous class we understood about the risk management. So risk management is defined as this according to the standards. It says the systematic application of management policies, procedures, and practices to the task of establishing the context, identifying, analyzing, assessing, treating, monitoring, and communicating. So, in this definition, you can make out it is clearly explaining the management process how it works. Yes, first you'll try to find it out what are the policies required to plan about the risk management, what are the procedures required, what are the practices they are following in the organization in order to complete or establish any specific task. Or if you are doing any project, you will understand what are the important things need to be analyzed, like what are the contents of the project, what are the key notes of the project, identify which are the tasks to be completed, analyze the task, assess the task, and monitor and see to it if there is any issues, try to communicate it. So this is the way you will analyze the project and try to find it out if there is any risk ascertained to that particular project. This is the meaning of the risk management according to the standard ESN NZS 43602004. It says, in a very general manner, we can say risk management is an iterative or interactive process that which each cycle can contribute progressively to organizational improvement by providing management with a greater insight into risk and their impact. Why do these phrases usually done? In order to understand if there is any issue or if there is any problem, if there is any risk ascertaining to any of the investment or any of the work to be complete or a task to be completed, if there is anything as such which can be clearly went and understood in depth inside of the risk and understand what are the impact of those risks, can we analyze the entire process, we call it as risk management process. Okay, so the moment we say risk management, first the question comes, what is risk? Yes, risk is something which cannot be and which cannot be predictable, which is uncertainty, be uncontrollable in nature. Yes, so in order to manage the risk, we need to have a some set of process or some set of steps to be followed. So that we're gonna understand in the present video. So you can see there is a flowchart mentioned over here which clearly explains the risk management process. Okay, so first you can see identify the risk, analyze the risk, evaluate the risk, and treat the risk. This is the systematic way they follow it. So before that, we can see some of the back end work has been done, like try to collect the strategic context of the project or an investment or a task to be completed in the organization. So what are the development criteria to be made? So you will see the project or a task or an investment in detail. You will try to analyze it. After analyzing, you will find out is there any risk accomplished to this particular task, but this particular criteria or this particular any kind of investment. There you will try to analyze, identify the risk. That comes the first step. Identifies the risk, what can happen and how can it happen. These two questions need to be analyzed when you are getting into the first step of the risk management, that is identifying the risk. Coming to the second one, when you are answerable to these two questions, next comes the second step, analyze the risk. So you will try to determine the existing controls. If there is risk is there, what might be the next step to be followed? Can I control this risk? Is it predictable? Was it uncertainty or was it caused with an due to some uncertainty in the organization or any consequences due to the particular situation, anything as such. Yes, so you will try to analyze what is the likelihood happen and what are the consequences and how well I can come out of it. That says the second step. Third one is evaluate the risk. So you will try to see, if I'm using this controlling measure, will I able to control the risk, or will I able to at least reduce the loss caused by the risk. You will try to analyze it, see some alternatives, and choose whichever is suitable, then you go further. So here you will try to compare, or you will try to compare against criteria. If the risk can be controlled using these measures, if yes, accept and go treat the risk. If it is not accepted, again go back to the first step, monitor and review, then strategic context, again identify the risk, etc. If the risk evaluation is perfect enough, then go treat the risk, identify the treatment options, how you can make it, evaluate the steps, and work accordingly. Once it is done, communicate these things to the further team. Like if you go in this path, you will be able to analyze the risk management process easily. So this is how it explains as per the chart. Okay, so adding some more point to the risk management process, here it has been clearly mentioned as identifying the risk, the same thing, identify the causes and identify the control. That again talk about, if you go back to the picture, that talk about the analyzing the risk. Yes, establish your likelihood and consequences, that again talk about the analysis of the risk. Establish a risk rating description, that clearly explains about the evaluate the risk and also treat the risk. That is how it has made the breakups. So let us understand in detail what it talk about. Identify the risk. So this is the first step in the risk management, where they'll try to understand how the risk gonna happen, what might be the risk it is. Example, there is a quoted here: fundraising a commercial opportunity. If you're starting to build a building, the first issue will be the location. For purchasing the location, you should have some fund, right? So raising a fund would be a problem, right? That might be a risk, identifying it. And these are the risks that you face. Example, loss of key team members, prolonged network outage, delayed provision of important information, etc. So this might be the adding on some of the risk factor impacting on it, because if you have the fund, then only you will have a then only have a employees to work for this to build a building or a constructing a building, right? So if this is not there, that will impact on the some other factors. So in general, identify the risk says, as a group, list the things that might inhibit your ability to meet your objectives. You can even look at the things that would actually enhance your ability to meet those objectives. So where is the risk is happening, how it is happening, when can it happen? So these two questions need to be analyzed when you go for the identifying the risk. Coming to the second one, identify the causes. So when you know the risk has happened, due to why it has happened, why it has happened, when it has happened, how can it happen? So these things need to be analyzed in a better way to go for the further steps. So one among them is you should analyze what is the causes of the risk. So try to identify what might be the causes these things to occur. So that the key member might be disillusioned with his her position, might be headhunted to get elsewhere. So if you don't have fund to pay the salary to the employees, what they will do? They try to shift their job to the other organization. Yes, especially the people who are experienced candidates are people who are key team members. So if they leave the organization, then the it will be a biggest challenge to the organization, right? To maintain few of the tasks. So the supervisor required to approve the commercial undertaking might be a risk averse and need extra convincing before taking the risks. So you want to need to maintain that person in the organization. So what best way you can do it? Giving them some extra benefits, or telling them to hike the salary, or if you are giving all these extra benefits to him, again the fund is more important. The fund itself is not there, again it is going to be a situation. So that is a small example explains about the identify the causes. Next one, identify the control. So identify control. So when you get to know this is a problem, this is a risk. So the next step gonna happen is identify the control. So identify all the things that you have in the place that are aimed at reducing the likelihood of your risk. Likelihood is nothing but it's gonna happen. So due to the some uncontrollable situation that first place and they do happen. So what you have in place to reduce their impact? How can you reduce your risk? So if that person is going to some other company, then you have to give some money to retain him, either hike in the salary. So for that fund is more important. How can you control it? Raising the fund from some different organization or asking some investors to be a part of the organization like a partnership, something like that. Yes. So there is an example quoted here is providing a friendly work environment for your team, multi-skill across the team to reduce the reliance on one person, stress the need for the required information to be supplied in a timely manner. So one of team members, if they leave the organization, it is a challenge for them to look out for an experienced candidate. So if for that, you can make them retain by giving a friendly work environment, making them to improvise their skill by giving a training, etc. And also this will make them to motivate work in a better way. Yes, that is one of the example quoted here. Next one is establish your likelihood and consequences. So always remember that this likelihood and consequences depend upon the context of your analysis. That is, if your analysis is related to your work unit, any financial loss or a loss of key staff members will impact on your work unit only. If you are thinking about any project as such, that will impact on your complete business only. So you should analyze what regarding what you are trying to establish your likelihood and consequences. So one of the example here quoted here is the losses of 3 lakhs dollar might be considered insignificant to the university, but it could be very well to be catastrophic to your work unit. So the 3 lakh loss it can be a biggest challenge to the university, but might look small to the university, but it cause a very big task on the particular unit. Yes, so under university there will be so many colleges, there's so many units, working unit for one particular unit. If 3 lakh dollar is a big, it is a very huge amount, right? So that should be analyzed clearly. What is likelihood and what is the consequences descriptory talk about when you are analyzing or establishing the risk. So now we mentioned about the likelihood concept. Yes, so likelihood is nothing but it clearly states the state or a fact of something being probability can happen. Yes, so the good example is young people who can see no likelihood of finding employment. So that says about the fact they are not getting the opportunity, that call it as a likelihood. It gonna happen, it might happen. Yes, the state or a fact of something happening. So that is the general meaning of likelihood. So when we talk about likelihood in risk factor, so it says that likelihood risk always talk about the state of being probable or a chance of threat occurring. Yes, there might be chances of something gonna happen or a threat of occurrence. It might be due to uncertainty or consequences that talk about the likelihood. So coming back to the step, what it says, establish your likelihood and consequences. So determine on what basis are you doing the analysis. Are you doing based on the work unit or in the level of university level? University level talk about the whole unit. Okay, so this is the fourth step, talk about the establish your likelihood and consequences descriptor is. Coming to the fifth one, establish a risk rating description. So what is, which is the level of risk are you expecting? So you will try to come up with the alternative C, which is the level of risk. According to that, you will try to use the risk plans or alternatives to solve out of it. If it is your low risk, which is suitable. If it is moderate, which type of controlling measure can be used. If it is high, which is the best way to come out of it. So you will rate the risk and try to match up with the risk to be controlled. Yes, so because these are more generic in terminology, though you might find that university strategy is describing applicable, but it should be analyzed. If this is matching, well and good. If this is not matching what should be done, I can go back the step again further continues. So these are the general steps of the risk management process which can be asked for 7 or 10 marks. Very important question. Coming to the next topic. Today we're going to understand the types of risk exposure. So risk exposure. So the moment we call it as risk exposure, so one thing come to our mind. What is exposure? Then we'll come back to the risk exposure later. So exposure talk about it is a state of having no protection from something harmful. Yes, something gonna happen in future time period, right? So which cannot be predictable. So that is the general meaning of exposure. Then what is risk exposure? So risk exposure always says about the risk which can happen in the future time period, or we can say that something we are expecting due to some particular that we call it as risk exposure. So risk exposure is the measure of potential future loss resulting from a specific activity of an event. Due to some activity, this risk can be this risk might happen in the future time period. So that call it as a risk exposure. So these types of risk can be further classified as three types: pure and speculative risk, diversifiable and undiversifiable risk, and enterprise risk. So let us understand one after the other. Pure and speculative risk is again further classified as liability loss exposure and liability pure risk. So which talk about loss caused by a third party who is considered at a fault. Due to some third party it is happening. So it might be the legal system is designed. So as it says, liability loss exposure, liability pure risk. So this is clearly talk about the legal system designed in order to mitigate risk and is not intended to create new risk. So these are the risks which is happen due to legal system. Yes, so they need to be liable to pay something, right? So liability risk may occur because of catastrophic losses or exposure. Catastrophic loss is nothing but the series of loss has happened due to some sudden natural calamities, like so there were four building attaching together. Due to the fire's heat, the further buildings were got fire in a series way, that we call it as catastrophic. Due to natural calamities also, or due to flood also, which is uncertainty. So under most legal system, a party can be held responsible for the financial consequences of causing damage to others. So one is exposed to the possibility of liability loss by having to defend against lawsuit. So if they it was caused due to the uncontrollable also, but which was not done in a proper way. So there might be chances of issuing a lawsuit when he or she has in some way hurt other people without intention or with intention, but it is against the law. So there might be chances of lawsuit can be issued in the liability loss exposure. So in general, we can say so liability loss exposure talk about the legal system which is designed to mitigate risk and is not intended to create new risk. It was not intention to create a new risk, but due to some issue it has happened. So it has the power of transferring the risk from your shoulder to mine. So transferring one risk to the other person's head. So when this gonna happen, it will be a very strict enough to handle it. So it's a best platform to get out of it is only the insurance companies. Coming to next one, catastrophic loss exposure and fundamental or systematic. So a loss that is catastrophic include a large number of exposure in a single location is considered a non-accidental risk. Yes, just now I said there were four building, to one building got a fire catch, other three building was very close to the building. Due to the fire heat, what happened? Other three buildings also in series got burnt up. Yes, so too many people are properties may be hurt or damaged in one location at once. So then these company is responsible for other three buildings loss also. Yes, so that's the reason the insurance needs to worry about its own solvency and check out if something goes wrong in the future, the company will be liable to pay other three buildings losses. Yes, that we call it as catastrophic losses. So all homes in the path will be damaged or destroyed when a flood occurs. So as such, the flood impacts a large number of exposures. Such these exposures are subjected what is called as fundamental risk. Okay, so fundamental risk calls about something was happened due to the natural calamities. Again, the series of buildings or something goes wrong. So that we call it as fundamental risk. So generally, these type of risk are too pervasive to undertake by insurers and affect the whole economy. So again, this is not controlled by any person. We never know flood when can come and when the huge rain come and when suddenly the fire suddenly the volcano happen, we doesn't know. So it depend upon the situation. So this can be only controlled by a few of the controlling measure, so which can be undertaken by the insurers and affect the whole economy also. So there are some norms as in insurance company. All losses cannot be recovered. To an extent it can be done. The example here quoted is, so hurricanes in Florida and southern eastern shores of the United States, flood in the Midwestern states and earthquakes in the western states are very common. Yes, these types of loss exposure that are associated with the fundamental risk, and these are generally systematic and non-diversifiable. So these risks are systematic in nature and cannot be diversified because which is caused due to natural calamities, right? So those are called as fundamental risk. Coming to the next one today, next one we talk about accidental loss exposure in particular. So many pure risk arise due to accidental causes of loss. So not due to man-made but are not intentional ones also. Yes, so those are called as accidental losses. So without any intention or without any man intervention, something goes wrong and that may lead to an accidental loss. Yes, so, as opposed to fundamental losses and non catastrophic accidental losses, such as those caused by fires, are considered to be a particular risk. I was giving the example of fire. So, when a building is working due to some emergency, they are working and they have not seen the electronic poles is working right or not. They were doing the job, and all of a sudden something goes wrong and the fire catches. So if the fire catches, what happens? The entire building got burnt, and it was not made man-made due to something the or higher voltage or something. The fire got catched, but without intention or unintentionally, but there is a losses occurred. Right, so those type of losses we call that accidental loss exposure, and these are pure risk. So often the potential losses are reasonable bounded. Risk transfer mechanisms such as insurance can be used to handle the financial consequences. So if you have a risk, in order to control the risk transfer, the best way is to the insurance company. Okay. Coming to the next one, so this also called as the term exposure, which is man-made, and this is also due to the risk associated with the data knowledge. All these things need to be analyzed. So now we can come to a conclusion. What is exposure? The term exposure is used to include all units subject to some potential loss might be happen in the future future time period. So another possible categories of exposure is risk of nature, risk related to a human nature. Human nature, it might be because of theft or fraud or man-made risk which can create a risk in the organization. Yes, and risk associated with the data and knowledge. Talk about risk, legal system, and also the large system intellectual property. This is one of the categories of exposure which is in general in nature. Coming to the diversifiable risks as a risk, those can have their adverse consequences mitigated simplify by having a well diversified portfolio of risk exposure. So they have a portfolio, they can diversify it. The best example here quoted is, so having some factories located in non-earthquakes areas or hotels placed in numerous locations in the United States diversify the risk. If one property is damaged, the others are not subject to the same geographical phenomenon. Yes, so there are too many business in the too many business units are there for a particular company. So one company has a earthquake in some particular location. So the other units are in the different areas where there is no flood or something. So it says that if at least if something goes wrong with the business unit which is near to the earthquake or something, the other three units are safe enough. So the loss can be recovered from the other three companies' profit also. That we call it as diversifiable. It's nothing but wherever you want to make investment, try to split the investment and make a split the amount and make an investment where if one goes wrong, other part can be safeguarded with the other investment policies that we call it as diversified risk. So these are the risks which are idiosyncratic with particular characteristics that are not in nature, are often viewed as a being phenomenal, having a financial consequences reduced or eliminated by holding a well diversified portfolio. You can diversify risk with a portfolio of risk exposure. By that way you can control it. Coming to the next one, non-diversifiable risk. So systematic risks that are shared by all. On the other hand, such as global warming or movement. So these risks cannot be shared among by all. This risk, systematic risks, are shared by all. On the other hand, which can be shared by all due to global warming. So every assets or exposure in the portfolio is affected. Not only particular business, but every persons are exposed. And the field of risk management deals with the both diversifiable and non-diversifiable risk. So the best example is global warming. Due to global warming, many entire economy has got a impact when this global warming happen, and the credit crisis has been happened of fall 2008 non-diversifiable risk. Yes, the entire economy only hit it. So those are called as non-diversifiable risk. Coming to the next one, enterprise risk. So the enterprise risk map of is always talk about the risk related to the enterprise, that talk about the asset risk, product risk, and operational risk. So this explains about the operational risk include public relations risk, environmental risk, and the several others not detailed in the particular map. So you can see there are risk balls because which clearly explains the different categories. So first will be the capital structure, financial risk will be there. After that they'll think, once the finance has been funded, then you will start thinking about the different categories. What is the product, how can I prepare the product, how can I produce the product. And then comes asset, how you, what are the best remedies to be taken, which are the proper assets are required, plant and machinery, human resources. So all these three categories need to be analyzed when you start up any enterprise. So all this also talk about the different exposures of the risk. Okay, so this is our three important things we can discuss in the types of risk exposures. Next one is risk of e-exposure, which talk about electronic risk or e-risk comes in many forms like any property, computer, or vulnerable theft and employee damage can happen accidentally or maliciously. So again, we need to come out of it. The best way platform is to get a insurance out of it. E-risk property policies over damage to the insured computer system website, including lost income because of a computer crash. So an increasing number of insurers are offering e-commerce liability policies. So in order to come out of this, the many insurance companies coming up with the e-liability policies where they can control these type of risk exposures. Coming to the exposure to legal liability or exposure to work related injury. So work related injury, it is talk about the injury or illness caused, contributed, or significantly when a work is going to happen in the organization. Like the work related injuries, the job, a person who was doing a specific job, the machine fell on him and he got hurt. Yes, that is also work related injury only. So in order to control this work related injuries, the best platform is again going for health insurance. So they are exposed to various risks, and therefore in order to sustain themselves to achieve corporate goal, the organization must have a risk management policy where they have a strong bonding saying that if risk gonna happen, they can provide some kind of a benefit to the employees. So that of a work related injury. Legal liability, again we discussed about the lawsuit. Again that explains about the legal liability, or which is more important. Relations to claim. In relation to the claim, find out whether the insurance coverage in a particular case applies or not. So their types of policy wordings will occur. When you're claiming the insurance policies, three things should be analyzed: when it has occurrence, claim made basis, and acts committed basis. Occurrence talk about the damage or injury, when was it occurred, is it in the policy period or not. Our claim may occur after expiry, then they can't get the money out of it. Claims made it basis, is it the claim is made during the policy period, or is it the claims, what you call add-ons are added or not, or they have any negligence occurred, that to be analyzed. And acts committed basis, the negligent act must act during the policy period. Is it the act has occurred in the policy period or after the policy period? All these three important things to be maintained when they go for a relation to the claims when you come out, in order to reduce your losses due to the risk. Okay, so this is very important. We have furthermore calculations in further in the sixth module of this subject, so I'll be explaining in further videos. Last but not the least, liability insurance products. So nowadays, the insurance products have come up with the many things in order to safeguard their risk. The one among them are public liability for industrial and non-industrial risk. So in order to come out of the industrial risk, they have come up with the public liability insurance products. Product liability for the product base any risk, professional indemnity for doctors and class auditors, etc. Even the insurance for them also, employees liability, directors and official liability, act policy under PLI Act in 1991, motor marine and aviation policies, car, year, IAR, etc. have provision to extend over TP liability. So these are the liabilities or insurance products which has been initiated by the insurance companies in order to avoid the business risk or a risk exposure. So we'll understand more in our further units. Thank you for watching my video.